Cloud 101 has kind of been a long time starting, but we're here now. I'll open up the Moodle page and I'll go through all of the things that I would like you guys to do. Okay, if you've got any questions as we go along, we can just deal with them as we see them. But basically, if I just go through everything and we video this, and then you have a look through the video again just to double check everything, it's basically start at the Moodle page and go down each item until you basically run out of things to do. But basically I will go through all of that and you can use this video for reference. Okay, but follow along because it should all make sense as we go along. So Cloud 101 is an EC unit that's going to run on a Wednesday morning. It's a 4-hour class. So in terms of starting off, we've got this Amazon AWS course, which is an online course. It's a bit like Cisco NetAcad, and there's course materials on there that we are going to refer you to, and I'll show you how to join that course. Now, we had some problems setting those up. Amazon took a long time getting back to us, but suffice to say, I do believe that that is sorted now, or at least I'll be able to show you what I would like you to do. You should have an email from Amazon in terms of showing you what's what. I will go through all of that in due course. Suffice to say though, where are we at the moment? Well, cloud computing means, from our perspective, being able to run servers as virtual machines on the internet. So we kind of go through the whole idea of what cloud computing is first. We want you to be able to understand cloud computing and also the perspective of using AWS as a product to supply you with that cloud computing service, and then see how it works. And there's various labs and bits and pieces that we'll get you guys to do. So you could run any server as a virtual machine on your own computer, but what people are doing now is they're just using other people's servers, like Amazon, for example, in the cloud to be able to provide you or your company or whatever it is that you would be dealing with the sort of things that you just run yourself. You just don't run it yourself. You don't have to buy your own hardware. You just rent their hardware. That's the point. So you might run a database server, an application server, a web server, or any sort of server or virtual machine that you'd like to use. It doesn't even need to be a web thing. It can be a thing like a server for your own company, and just keep it private as opposed to public. And we'll go through those different types of cloud mechanisms in a little while. Amazon AWS work with companies like Airbnb, ITV, Netflix. I mean, that's pretty big. Sony, WeTransfer, McDonald's, and NASA. So we are in good company. So suffice to say, lots of companies use these products, cloud computing services. And so one thing that will happen is you will have to get more and more used to it if you go and work in the industry in the future. We'll be using Amazon AWS in order to teach the course. You'll log onto the website using an account that hopefully by now has finally been created for you. And I'll go through that, and I'll go through the stuff that's on Moodle that matches this AWS learning website content as well. Assessments, we'll deal with that in due course. And then what we've got is a timings and lab list, which is a bit skewed with the dates so far, but not to worry about that. We'll get the things that we need to get done. And then what we've got here is a student sign-up guide. So the first thing that I would get you guys to do is appreciate that you should have an email that would look a little bit like this, and it would give you a link to be able to go into the AWS Educate website. So what we've got running there is this particular file that will help you with dealing with that. And it's this particular one. It's available on Moodle, as you can see. I've opened it up and this is it. And it says you'll get your email, click here, and then I'd like you to follow these instructions on this document to be able to get you to My Classrooms, and then you can work from there. If you go into or end up in somewhere called Vocarium, that's where you do the practical work. So it's Amazon AWS Educate for the content, Vocarium for the labs. It's all in that document. Please have a look at that and deal with that as we go through the different parts of the morning. So that's that first bit there. So you should have this email, and what happens when you go through this process is it will take you to the Amazon AWS Educate website, and then what will happen is you will log in, create some sort of account, login, whatever, and you should be able to see something called My Classrooms. Okay, and inside there you should be invited to join a class. Now I've got several here because I'm teaching several classes. You guys are the B group, I believe. So what I would get you guys to do is to accept the invitation for the B group, which is the one that you would get. Accept the invitation, you click continue, and it lets you into that class. There we go. Or at least, all things being well, that should be fine. So the educator activation, I'll get that dealt with as we go through the morning, but you should be able to see something called My Classroom at some point, and inside there you should be able to, where is it? I'll come back to that in a minute. That's it. Go into career pathways. Sorry, not My Classrooms, we've been there, career pathways. And then we will invite you to continue and to join Cloud Computing 101, because that's the course that we will be using, and that's also the content that is reflected on the Moodle page. So it looks a little bit like this. I'll go through that in a minute. What I'll do now, just for the time being, is just bump back to the Moodle page and show you this. So Cloud Computing Services Introduction, that's this first bit. If we actually go into here and look on modules, you'll see that the first bit is introduction, then overview, and then these different bits and pieces. But what we've done on Moodle is we put them in a slightly different order. So suffice to say, introduction first, then compute services, storage, developer tools, networking and content delivery, etc. These are these different chapters. We'll be going through the first few as part of today's class. So the Moodle, wrong Moodle page, back to the Moodle page. So we've gone through the summary. If we go into week 1, which is what we would have done previously, the compute services introduction notes on Moodle are an exact copy of what we have going on inside this AWS page. So what happens is you go into AWS, into the class, go through, click next, and then the thing that you'll find is you have various amounts of text, and then there's videos that they would like you to watch. Some of the videos are long, some of them are short. Basically, you can go through as much as that as you would like to, but I'll just show you this. If I show you this introduction notes, you will be able to see that basically, as I've said, what I've done is I've ripped the content from the website. So the stuff that you see on the website and the stuff that you see in these notes are the same thing. There's the various links, that's the various text that goes through. Again, have a look through these notes, have a look through the content that's on AWS. It's the same sort of content, but nonetheless, go through that content in your own time. Now, in terms of getting started on cloud computing, there's 3 links here that I would like you guys to just have a look at. And they will tell you a little bit about the background behind cloud computing and what it is. Again, have a look through this in your own time. Click. And so it will start to tell us what is the cloud, etc., etc., etc. Now, types of cloud development, types of cloud. Public cloud would be something that is online. It might be a web server or a service like Netflix. Private cloud is something that you would run using Amazon AWS, but only you or people that you work with would see it. It wouldn't be available to everybody on the internet, just privately to your own organization. A hybrid cloud mixes the 2 of these things together, and then a community cloud shares lots of things with everybody outside of, if you like, a single organization, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone in the world can see it. So there's information about these different definitions here. Again, I'd get you to have a look at that in your own time. That's a worthwhile resource. The second link is similar to the first one. The third link, slightly different, tells you about the whole idea of as a service. Now, if you're dealing with something on the cloud, as a service is the terminology for it. And you might be dealing with infrastructure, a platform, or software. Again, I will get you guys to go through that in your own time. But one thing that I will say, if I just shut that down for now, is if we then go on to week 2, just to catch up, this whole idea about as a service and these different things is actually shown in this comparison image here. And of course, as a service, if you're dealing with everything yourself, that's fine. You run everything yourself. You've got your own servers, you buy them yourself, your own network, your own hard drive system, your own virtualization, all of it you run yourself. If you're dealing with infrastructure as a service, the server hardware stuff is dealt with by AWS. You deal with that stuff. That's the kind of thing that we will start showing you at first. If you want to go to AWS and say, we just want to manage the data, can you run the virtualization and the operating system as well as the hardware? They'll do that. If you want software as a service, they basically manage everything for you, and they just give you the outputs. You don't have to deal with anything else. So you've got these different sorts of public or private cloud or hybrid or community cloud, or you've got these different ways of running the amount of virtualization that you want to deal with. So there we go, just something for you guys to have a look at. So the AWS overview notes there is basically this. And then on another day, we'll deal with analytics, but for the time being, we'll just stick with the overview. It's basically the whole idea of what the cloud is. Again, it's that information that I've just shown you. Again, if you have a look through that, then that would be good. Now, there's another thing I would like you guys to have a look at, which is something that is available as a video. I'll just open this up on YouTube. And what it is a 7-minute video explaining Amazon EC2. Now, EC, elastic computing, is the Amazon term for you setting up a server. It's called an instance. If you have a server running as a virtual machine, you are running an instance. And this video basically goes through and shows you how Netflix use Amazon AWS elastic computing instances to run Netflix for you. Now, I'll get you to have a look at that yourself. Again, it's one of the things I'll get you to have a look at when we finish this particular class. As you go through the content on Moodle and go down from start to finish, you'll get there eventually. That's a good explanation as to what's going on. Now, the practical work for today involves setting up your first instance, and I'm going to go through that in a little while. And what we'll do is we'll deal with compute services next week. We've got some more content that we're going to put into there. So we'll actually deal with weeks 1 and 2 today, as this is basically the first class. But the practical that I want you guys to do is setting up an EC2 instance. And what there is here is there's a step-by-step how-to guide on that. Okay. So again, I will go through that in a little while. But the one thing that you will do is you will log in. You should be able to see my classrooms. You should be able to see the classroom. You should be able to go to the classroom. And one thing that we're looking for is this particular page that takes us to an Amazon AWS console. That's where we actually set up our instances. That's where you run your servers. You could have that in a real work environment, or in this case, in an educational environment. But nonetheless, we're going to have to get that sorted out. So basically what we need to do is go to this class. Oh yeah, just thought I'd better mention one more thing. Okay, while we go through to this class, quizzes. Okay, there are 2 quizzes for you guys to do. One's on cloud computing basics, one's on cloud computing. I will open this up and get you guys to do this cloud computing basics quiz. Okay, and we'll run it as a first assessment, if you like, and I'll make that available to you, and you guys can have a go at that at some point between now and next week. Actually, I don't need to make it available to you. It already is available to you. We would like you guys to get a good score, and then if you could email me what your score is, that would be great. So that would be another task that we'd like you to do this week, this week. Cloud computing basics quiz. Please have a go at that. Now, just need to go onto Cloud Computing 101, because what I'm looking for now is the link that takes us to that lab work. And of course, my classroom. Yeah, okay. So what it is, here we go, is you should see go to classroom. Now, Obviously, your classroom, you've still got to get your invitation sorted out. I've got mine sorted out from here. Of course, this is the thing I needed to find. Inside my classroom, scroll down, go to classroom, and that should take you, knew we'd get there eventually, into this vocarium.com thing. Good. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to demonstrate the piece of practical work that we want you guys to do today. So from here, we're going to go into the AWS console, and what will happen, and of course these notes can take you through it, you will click on the EC2 link that's there. There it is. And then what we can do here is create a new instance. We'll launch an instance, and that will allow us to set up our first virtual machine, our first server, if you like. And so going through this process, what will happen is we will get you to use the free one, okay, because it won't cost you anything. Because what happens with AWS is they charge you for the work that you do, but the free ones are there for educational purposes, and it's those that we want you to use. Select the 64-bit Amazon Linux 2 instance, and then go through and pick the free option again, okay, and that will enable us to create the correct system. And then configure instance details is the next page. So what happens there is there's these various settings. We'll just go for the defaults. You click next to add your storage. Just go with the defaults again. It basically sets you up a hard drive. The next stage is add tags. Again, we don't need to do any of that at the moment. Next is configure security group, and here you will configure a firewall, and at the moment the only thing allowed is SSH access. We'll just go with that for now. Click review and launch, and double check and launch, and that will start up your server. Now it will ask you about sorting out an SSH key pair, but for the time being, if you go back and use this document, which is available on Moodle, again, just let me remind you that it's this one here, the EC2 instance answer. Okay. We will proceed without a key pair, that will be fine. Launch instance is okay. Don't forget to acknowledge, blah, 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 blah. And then it will finally start running, and you will be able to see what's going on. Okay. View instances takes you here. That's your running instance. Scroll over, you'll see that you have a public IP address. We'll get onto that in just a minute. So again, if we are in this particular AWS Educate vocarium.com location, AWS console, EC2, this is me doing it for real now. I've already got one instance running, that's fine. So you would click launch instance, you would click launched instance and go through the instructions in the answer document, the ones that I've just been going through. I've already got one running, which is a copy of what you guys have just made. So there it is, this is me going straight to the final stage. Instance, there it is by name, it's got an identifier, it's running, it's got a public IP address, and of course that's my public IP address. Your one is likely to be different, please bear that in mind. Okay, so there's my IP address. So if I just go back to this lab document now, what we should probably do is ping it. So open up a command prompt on your laptop or PC and ping your public IP address, not mine. Now the ping will not work. So one question to ask at the moment, and of course this is part of the lab, why would it be that the ping wouldn't work when the server, the instance, is running? What do you think?
Well, even if the server is running, is not connected to the internet, maybe?
It is, it's running, it's got a public IP address. Nice try, but it's not that. Anyone else want to put an idea forward?
Our computer has to be the same network. No?
Well, if it's on the internet and we can see the internet, we are on the same network because we're accessing the internet. Again, a nice try. Can you remember that one of the stages was configuring security? What were we setting up there? What was that? SSH was allowed, but nothing else was. What's the word for it? Begins with F, and you know the answer.
The firewall.
It's a firewall. So there's a firewall configured. Well done. So have a look at this next bit. So what we've got here is we've got a ping that doesn't work because, please think about this before we move on. What did we do earlier in that security group section? We created a firewall. And what do firewalls do by default? They block pings. So if you go back to the security groups tag, if I just open this up on the web page, if you go down to the security groups tag, you need to scroll down on this side. Can you see there that it takes us back to our firewall page? I'm just going to find the instance that I'm dealing with. Can you see that what we have is SSH, but can you see what I've done is I've added ICMP, which is basically a ping packet, into the inbound rules as being allowed. So you have to do that to be able to get yourself to ping. And if you can ping, that's you completed this first lab, because it means you've got your server instance running and you can connect to it. So again, if I just go back to this here help document, the one that's on Moodle, the one that I want you to have a look at. Security groups configuration, you find your instance, and you will see inside there that at the moment by default, we still just have SSH. Edit inbound rules, okay, add rule, and then what we can do is we can go into this line, don't click delete, we just go into this line and we edit this. We use the menu here to scroll and find all ICMP IP4, and an ICMP packet is the technical name for a ping packet. So you find that, you put it into the list, go back to your command prompt. Okay, now the previous ping didn't work, but what we can do is we can run the ping again. So if you ping your public IP address with the -T switch at the end, the pings will keep going. So what's happening at the moment is we click save rules, and then we actually realize, oops, sorry, I forgot to configure the IP addressing. You need to add the IP address of 0.0.0.0/0 for your prefix, that is to say subnet mask, which means all traffic. So we'll just keep it nice and simple. So we need to have the ICMP IP4 in on the list with the appropriate IP addressing, as you can see there, set. Now if we click save rules, it'll work. So there it is configured, and as you can see, as you could see when I showed you earlier on my instance, you've got both of these inbound rules now. Okay, so you've got both of these inbound rules, SSH for when we access securely to manage the server, and ICMP for ping testing. What you'll find is it won't work, it won't work, it won't work, and then it'll work. So when the pings respond, the firewall must have been reset to allow ICMP traffic. Hit Control-C to stop the pings because it works, because basically we are done. That's the lab that we want you guys to achieve today. So there we are. You can then just basically leave that there. So I'm just going to take you back to the Moodle page again. So what we've got is week 1, the introduction, and then week 2, the overview. We'll do these 2 weeks as part of today's class. It's basically going through that web content, having a look at the notes and joining the class, and then doing this first lab. Now there's a lab document here. That's just a thing for reference. Don't use that, use this one. It'll take you through step by step. And then what you will have at the end of today's session is an Amazon EC2 server, that is to say an instance running that you can ping. That is what we would like you guys to achieve for today's practical work. And of course, the rest of the 4-hour class would be going through this content, joining the class, and making sure that you have a bit of an awareness as to what's going on with cloud computing and your first cloud computing server running. That's where we are for today.